Merci, ça va.
Vous pouvez s'y poser sur les tables en arrière, oui.
Ok.
Moi, tu peux faire un test avant.
Ok.
Bonjour et bienvenue au cas de mandat RH. Préférez-vous les instructions en français? Do you prefer the instructions in English?
Ça ne me dérange pas. Oui, peu importe. Peu importe, il y a quelqu'un qui
Donc, chaque équipe dispose de 20 minutes afin de présenter son cas au juge. J'afficherai un carton pour indiquer les 10, 5, 2 dernières minutes ainsi que les dernières 30 secondes de la présentation. Lors des 10 dernières secondes du discours, j'indiquerai à l'aide de mes deux mains le nombre de secondes restantes. Si vous n'avez pas terminé votre présentation après 20 minutes, elle se verra arrêtée afin de passer à la période des questions. Une période des questions d'une durée maximale de 5 minutes est allouée au jury à la fin de la présentation. Je tiens à rappeler au jury qu'il est obligatoire de poser au moins une question lors de cette période. Veuillez noter que vous ne pouvez en aucun cas dévoiler le nom ou la provenance de votre université à risque d'être disqualifié. Je vais maintenant laisser les juges se présenter et ensuite vous pourrez débuter votre présentation.
So hi, I'm Isabel. I'm an HR intern at eSolutions.
Hi, my name is Carl, and I'm a general manager at the group Setza Production in Lille.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Lafontaine and I'm a HR advisor. At Desjardins, sorry.
Okay. We start whenever?
Yes.
Okay. I've had the opportunity to work in 2 different internships in the same industry in the same work environment. But they were 2 different companies, but I didn't see them any differently. Why? Because I didn't identify with their values and I didn't truly understand what they were all about. I saw them the same way. That's why we're here today. Hi, we're Clean Cut Consulting and we're here to identify the blueprint to your perfect solution.
And so we are here today to improve your integration, onboarding, and recruitment to support your company growth after the acquisition. And with this, we present to you Welcome Home. But before we dive into our solution, we'd like to dive into some key insights for you today. So let's take a look at where you are now. You, eSolutions, are the result of B-Star's acquisition of Bush Industries. And so you also have a new wave of recruits. And so this does result in a growing need for onboarding. And lastly, you don't currently have any organizational related or job specific trainings at your company. And so this brings to us to 3 key considerations: the recent acquisition, recruitment and onboarding, and learning and development. And so let's dive into our first question. How can you ensure employees are able to adapt to the changing environment? And so with this, we can see that the acquisition results in many different ways in which the employees work. You're bringing in 2 different groups of people. This, as a result, will naturally bring a new culture together. There is the responsibilities of the new employees, the new roles that are shifting, that requires new role definition. And lastly, there is confusion regarding the organization's future that needs to be clarified. And so, in order to continue with your growth, you must address the impacts of the acquisition on your organization. With that being said, change does have a large impact on your employees. And why is it important to address? Well, change can result in prolonged stress, physical health ailments, and you do risk losing organizational knowledge. And so change is stressful, and stressed employees are costly. Therefore, in order to ease the transition of any changes, you must ensure to keep your employees' health and wellness in mind. But how can you support your employees? Well, when it comes to transformation, employees do fear losing their jobs. However, when it comes to actually helping these employees, we can see that when having mentors, coaching these employees, they do react more positively. And this is really important to note, as the main challenge for organizational change failing is the team's resistance to change. And so it's important to clearly communicate the reason and vision for change. So what's changing, what's not, outlining it clearly, providing support, and encouraging adaptability. And so in order to support your employees, you must clearly communicate these types of changes. Moving forward, it's important to generate excitement for new changes and provide support for your employees. And so how can you support these new recruits while being onboarded into new positions? Well, when it comes to recruitment, there are many challenges. First, the inflow of new employees creates a gap between your new and current employees. You also have new hires that are confused as to what type of role that they're doing. And lastly, they don't really have a formal introduction to the company, as you don't have a very strong and structured onboarding system in place. And so in order to integrate your employees, you must consider the challenges that come with new hires. So let's take a look at your potential new hire. Meet Alex. Alex is a soon-to-be grad in business administration, and they seek a challenging job where they have independence, but also room to grow. Gen Z, exactly like Alex, really want to learn new skills, but also value inclusivity and want to work at a place where they feel like they belong. And so, in order to retain the employee Alex, you must provide an inclusive work environment and development opportunities. So, how can you do this? Well, a key component here is onboarding. Onboarding actually does a good onboarding results in a 50% increase in productivity. And so, proper onboarding is really profitable. In fact, the 90-day period after an employee is hired is extremely important, as you must be available for touchpoints, as 28% of employees actually left their job due to improper onboarding. And so, in order to increase your retention rate, you must ensure that your employees are properly onboarded. And so, what does this mean? Well, let's take an example as BMS acquired Medarex, which is a pharmaceutical company. They experienced a similar situation where post-acquisition, they needed an effective onboarding and integration strategy. So they did it in two parts, operational and cultural. Operational, where they really focused on the more technical job-specific aspects, and cultural, when it came to working with managers and employees to really integrate the new culture within the employees. And so the impact, well, 92% of employees actually felt like they played a role within the company and that they truly belonged within 1 month after being hired. And so, in order to create an onboarding program, you must consider the operational, but also the cultural aspects of onboarding. And so it's important to have an interactive onboarding plan to integrate your employees. Lastly, how can you ensure that your knowledge is being transferred to your new employees? Well, it's important to keep in mind that employees actually do want decision-making power. They do want that aspect of independence, but they do still want that relationship with their manager. They want to feel heard and guided. And so, in order to maintain strong employee morale, you must ensure that your managers are really equipped to lead your teams. And so lastly, when it comes to employees' growth, they do seek learning opportunities within their workplace. And it's important to know that you do have an opportunity here with your intranet, as e-learning actually increases retention rates as well as employee engagement. And so in order to make the most out of your new intranet, you must consider adding learning and development resources. And so it's important to establish training workshops and providing resources. So now let's dive into your options. We've come up with three alternatives. First, a management-driven solution. So really having a role division and role descriptions really cater to what your managers feel like is necessary. Next, a house is not a home. So having this be very much employee-driven decisions, really giving them their independence to choose their path. And lastly, e-solutions systems. So integrating really complex learning and development tools to advance and grow your company. And so when evaluating these three alternatives on time to implement, value alignment, the effect on onboarding, as well as employee integration, we've come to the conclusion that a house is not a home is the best solution for you today. However, a house is not a home until you make it one. And so we here at Clean Cut Consulting would like to present to you eSolutions Welcome Home, a one-year strategy to integrate and onboard your employees and boost retention. And this is based off of three key pillars. The first of which is build your house, which will focus on employee integration. Next, furnish your rooms, which will focus on communicating and managing change among all your employees. And lastly, make it home, where you create a well-established room to recruit, onboard, and retain your employees. Now I'll pass up to Megan that will dive deeper into our implementation of the strategy.
All right, so let's get into our first pillar, which is build your house. And what we want to do here is dig a strong foundation to make sure that information can be shared between your employees. That starts with building your intranet. So we know at the moment you have it set up, but it hasn't been launched, it hasn't been built. So what we want to do is first, let's think about the content. Currently, you want to have HR documents such as the policies, benefits, etc. be accessible. We want to add something more to that. So what we want to do is add your core values and how they're being applied throughout the organization, employee resources, company updates, and an IT help desk. Next, let's go into how it will be built. So what we want to do is create a task force comprised of 2 HR employees who will take care of content creation and selection, 2 IT employees who will take care of software selection and the actual building of the intranet. And finally, we want to include the department heads to make sure that they are choosing which employees have access to which spaces in the intranet. Finally, how are we going to train your employees to use this new system? So it starts first off with monthly trainings. So what we want to do is have 2 months where you have 2 trainings per week run by the HR department, and the employees will get to choose which one they want to attend. They have to attend 2 for mandatory, and the free lunches will be offered during these trainings. Secondly, we want to make video tutorials accessible at all times so they can be available on YouTube privately or on your intranet. Finally, for your schedule, we obviously can't onboard every single person onto this new thing at once, so we're going to start in Quebec with the B-Star location, make it French, the trainings first, see if we can weed out any issues, and then make them in English and send them off to the States to be learned by them. Let's move on to this. So this is your current executive team at eSolutions. And we noticed there was no VP HR, and with all of these new changes coming, we thought it would be important to add one. So what is the role of this new VP HR? They would be overseeing any changes that are being implemented. They would also be enforcing these policies organization-wide. And finally, they would be demonstrating eSolutions' commitment to the success via top-down support. Now, let's talk about your organizational structure. It was mentioned that there was a bit of confusion as to which employees should be reporting to who, so we want to make it clear for them to make it as easy as possible. So, what will remain the same? Any of the reporting structures at lower levels of the companies will remain the same to reduce confusion and keep consistency, and also departmental decisions that are relevant to the local market, so marketing, procurement, things like that. Now, what will we change? First off, the executives of eSolutions will be making major decisions such as corporate strategy or core values. We will also have the executives of each location that will be working with them to help implement these major scale changes and ensure that they work within their offices. And finally, we will have the new positions that are being brought in, and we will have employees working with their managers to come up with the position together to see what they can do. Finally, for this phase, we want to recruit internally and collaborate to create. So what this means is starting off for all of your new positions that you are developing, let's recruit internally first and support those employees that we already have. Secondly, these chosen candidates will be working with the managers to decide what are the day-to-day operations and tasks of their roles. And finally, later on down the line, they will be working with the manager and HR employees to come up with a standardized training so that whenever there is changement of positions, it'll be a lot easier to onboard new employees. Let's get into your second pillar, which is furnish your rooms. So now we want to make sure to decorate your walls and make sure that employees understand and that gaps are being filled. So first off, it starts with communication. This is key. So we want to host town halls. These would be quarterly and they would be hosted by executives. They would be mandatory for all of the office employees specifically. You would be introducing incoming changes, answering questions, and reducing stress overall. They would be done in the Canadian and American side, and finally, quarterly, like I said earlier. And we also want to include, we can just move on, thank you, the manager training boot camp. So what this would be is a 2-day event, a very, very fun event for managers that would be mandatory for them to learn how to guide their employees through this change. So the types of things that would be covered are things about change management and supporting your employees. And it would be led by an externally hired change management and values specialist. Furthermore, the goal here is to make sure that the managers can guide their employees through this change, that they can be good change agents so that to facilitate all of these things happening. Now we've been talking a lot about changes, but what exactly do we want to communicate? Let's get into that. The first change that we want to communicate is to add a core value. So currently you have integrity, accountability, teamwork, and community that are your core values. We want to add a fifth one, adaptability. This is to normalize uncertainty within the organization. You are a growing and evolving company, so it's important that employees know that changes can happen, and guess what? It's part of the core values. This is what you've signed up for. How are we going to be doing this announcement? So via memo, email, and a company-wide statement. We also want to generate excitement with merch and balloons. And finally, in the future, we noticed that Bush and B-Star, before the acquisition, they already had sustainability in common. So we think this is a really good route to take in the future, especially as young people appreciate those kinds of policies. Now, this is a mock-up. You could decorate your office with these balloons, get the excitement up. And we also made a mock-up of different types of merch, a water bottle of We Adapt, just to get employees really excited to show off their pride working at your company. Next, we want to support this change with a culture playbook. So let's get into what that looks like. First off, we want to take your aligned mission and values and vision to create a culture statement. This culture statement would be a one-stop shop for management to guide them whenever they're applying these changes into their policies, into their operations. And we also want to make an online version where you gather statements, photos, words of employees that really uphold these values so that it can be accessible to everyone. Finally, this culture playbook will be distributed to the HR department so that they can use it integrating new policies forward, and also distributed to new employees that are coming in so that they can be onboarded and really see what eSolutions is about. Next, we want to also implement some change champions. So let's get into what that looks like exactly. First off, the change champions, how they will be selected is you will have your managers give you candidates that would be suitable for the role. You can also ask for volunteers if there's not enough candidates. And finally, you can select the volunteers based on a few criteria. This is not inclusive, but respected by peers, committed to the organization's success, and they need to have good interpersonal skills. Next, we have change training and support. So this would be support offered to your change champions to ensure that they really know that they're doing the best job that they can. So going over the strategy that we've talked about today and their expectations over next year, we also want to give them tips on eliciting support from their peers and support them throughout the year with ongoing, regularly scheduled sessions. Finally, of course, we need to reward these change champions. So that would be first pick if there's conferences that you have to attend or international travel, invitations to special events. We all love a good hockey game, and helping build their network. So via sending a strategic email, helping them be able to push forward their careers. Finally, in this phase, we want to talk about managing employee resistance. It's going to happen every single time. How can we deal with it? It starts off with communicating the benefits to the company, ensuring that they understand, giving them a company written statement, team meetings, executive support. We also want to take note of resistors and have one-on-one meetings with them. And finally, create a feedback and improvement loop via Q&A and suggestion boxes. With that being said, I'd like to pass it off to Carly for your third piece.
Thank you, Megan. So now that we've furnished your rooms, now we want to make sure that it feels like home. How are we going to do that? So the first thing that we want to focus on is focus on your career postings right now. So we looked at your site right now and we identified a couple things that we think that can be improved on. So the first thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to add an interactive map that kind of showed where your jobs are and kind of outlined what industries they're in, just to make it a bit more visual for your applicants. In addition to that, we wanted to kind of clarify the differences between Bush and B-Star on that actual application form, just to make sure that they understand what they're signing up for. And lastly, we also want to provide maybe a phone number that applicants could actually call and ask questions rather than just contact through email. This is just to make sure that they kind of have all the resources that they need. In addition to that, we also want to clarify the recruitment process. So how do we want to do that? So the first thing we want to do is we kind of want to highlight the start dates of these roles, as well as the specific niche benefits that we will be suggesting actually in this pillar, to kind of incentivize them and they can learn a bit more about what they're kind of signing up for. We also want you to kind of update your descriptions, make them fun, work with your HR department to kind of focus in on the applicant and maybe who you're looking out for. We think it would be very interesting to also look into facility and head office tours, especially maybe in your first and your second round interviews, to basically integrate those applicants already, to get them excited about your values and your culture already. And lastly, what we think could be a great idea is to contact maybe universities 30 or 40 kilometers away from your facilities to already introduce those tours and get people already on board and into your company. Lastly, we also want to focus on your communication and how you kind of create a compensation strategy that is attractive for your applicants. So what we suggest, the first thing is allowing opportunity for transfers between locations. This could be in the States or in Canada on a semi-permanent or permanent basis. This could be something great that people would want to try and maybe try out new roles, things like that. We also want you to invest in your employees' well-being. As Isabel mentioned, this is something that's at the forefront of many of your applicants, so this is very enticing. We also want you to suggest vacation time, maternity and paternity leave, just so everything's very inclusive. As we mentioned, it's very important for all of your applicants. And lastly, we think it would be a great idea to implement niche benefits. The reason for this is your employees are going to feel more at home. They're going to feel like you value them. So that's what niche benefits are all about. These are just some ideas: pet insurance, inclusive holidays, time off for those, as well as time off for emergencies and things like that. So basically, these niche benefits and the normal benefits we suggest should be provided to all employees, so everybody feels included as well. Now on to onboarding. So we have 4 things that we want to talk about. The first one being onboarding. So this is the orientation and introduction to the culture values. So this is basically where they're going to learn about everything like that. We also wanted you to introduce maybe adaptability exercises during your onboarding just to get people talking about this as well. Secondly is the buddy program. So we suggest you match buddies, and the way that we wanted you to do this is take experienced people in the role already to ones that are going to be onboarded, and you buddy them up. And this, we would suggest encouraging coffee chats as well as 30, 60, 90 feedback. And lastly, engagement activities. This is basically different things that you can put in place as examples of this are recognition boards as well as suggestion boxes. And these are things that you can collect and implement over time where employees are going to see that you value them. And lastly, employee satisfaction surveys. We think that you should be doing this on a quarterly basis, and these questions are going to be an array of different things that you're going to collect, and we actually have an appendix slide on that if you're curious about examples on it. And lastly, we want to implement state interviews. What is a state interview? This is basically a way for you to kind of talk to your employees on an annual basis that are staying at your company to see why they want to stay at your company and why they still are. It's a really nice insight to kind of see what your employees value and maybe things you can improve as well. And lastly, we think that peer-to-peer learning is a great way to actually get employees that are working in different departments talking and learning. So we think that this should be implemented on a weekly basis on a sign-up basis as well. So we know that we've talked about a lot of tactics here. So what we've outlined for you here today is a very outlined version of our timeline that we can discuss afterwards. Here are the impacts. One of the main KPIs that we looked at was the Net Promoter Score. So before implementation, we had 4%, and now it's at 37%. And finally, here's our budget that we would love to talk about in Q&A, as well as the return on investment. So why were we here today? We're here to make sure the integration, onboarding, recruitment was going to be done throughout this big growth. And we have done this for you. And we hope that now your eSolutions is a feeling and not just a place. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Vous pouvez respirer.
Can I start with a question?
Yeah, I have a question concerning the last part, so the onboarding. I was wondering, one of our problematics was that we need to hire people. Is it better if I speak in French? I know that my English is in...
Either one we understand.
Okay,
yes.
Dans le fond, notre problématique, c'est qu'on a des employés qu'il faut mettre dans des postes, mais il n'y a pas de description de poste, on n'est pas sûr. Et comment on fait la différence entre l'intégration d'une personne comme avec un body, tu sais, que le body connaît le poste, vis-à-vis un poste qui n'a pas de body possible parce que le poste n'existait pas là, à l'interne avant?
Est-ce que c'est correct si je vous réponds en
Ah, non, c'est parfait.
So what we're going to do here is, of course, we realize that there's new positions, but let's just say they are a new hire who has never worked at eSolutions. Then we're going to pair them up with someone who has been at eSolutions for a long time so that they can understand the culture. And if they are someone that has been promoted into the role, then their buddy can be with someone that either there's similarities in the role, maybe they had a bit of the role before and it got transferred into a new role. But the point is to find someone that they can at least bounce some ideas off of and talk to.
Okay, super.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I truly believe everything you presented to us was really good, but I feel like there's a lot. So my question is, if I had to, because we want people to be doing their task as soon as possible because we want the job to be done. So if I had to prioritize a couple of action, which one would you prioritize?
So on that, and I'll answer that question. So for us, it would really be the change management. So making sure that your employees are aware of the changes that are going on. So we'd really focus in on that at the get-go, just to make sure that everyone understands what's going on.
Cool.
Parfait. J'ai pas de questions, c'était ma question.
I had other questions that I noticed. So you added, can I? You added a new core value, and I think this is very unique in a presentation. I feel like I'll go in French.
No worries.
Je me demande, en fait, Souvent, les valeurs doivent se représenter autant au niveau des ressources humaines, mais aussi au niveau du produit ou du moins de la perception de valeur du client. Comment est-ce qu'on peut merger justement cette nouvelle valeur-là aussi en réfléchissant à l'aspect produit, l'aspect compréhension du client? Je sais pas si ma question est claire.
No, absolutely. So when it comes to adaptability, this means more than just accepting changes, but it also means growing quickly and being able to respond to quickly. So either whether that be responding to customer in terms of customer service really well, or adapting to the changing environment, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mhm.
So this is really just a set of precedent for everything that comes with growth. So we adapt, we change as we grow and grow bigger.
Good.
Yeah, no, I'm all good.
Ah non, c'est bon. Est-ce que vous aviez fait un budget? Juste question.
Oui, oui. Oui, je vais te montrer. Ouais.
Vous pouvez me répondre en anglais, juste
Yeah,
vraiment
okay,
pas
perfect.
en français.
Yeah, so here's our budget. So I outlined all of it per phase as well, and I actually outlined kind of like you guys, it was mentioned, kind of like a return on investment as well. So I calculated based on the actual cost of it. So the total cost is right at the bottom here. So it's about 600,000, and we did calculate the actual cost of, let's say, bad turnover. So I'll actually show you this here. It's a bit more visual for you guys. Here you go. Bear with me. Okay, so I actually calculated based on industry pay scales of different salaries. So I looked at B-Star and I looked at Bush and I looked at many of your recent actual postings. So I looked up industry averages for those and I kind of averaged those out for both. And I looked at basically that average and I calculated my own. And normally, as we mentioned in the presentation, it's about 1.5 times a base salary to actually like bad onboarding, the cost of it and all the different things associated with it. So we actually calculated the turnover, your turnover rate, your retention rate would have to increase by like 0.2% to actually get a return on investment, which is about 6 people in general. So yeah.
Merci.
La période de questions est terminée.
Oh, okay.
Super slogan, can you take back?
Yes, absolutely.
So thanks again for your
Thank you so much,
presentation.
Miss. Thank you so much.
Merci.
Bonne soirée.
Bonne fin de semaine.